All right, welcome to Disability Media News Report and our live Q&A session with both Rahsaan and Koura. My name is Jennifer Price. I'm founder of the Dime Network, and I am excited to be here today to just talk about all things disability inclusion in the media, you know, how you got your start into it, the intentionality behind it, where media is right and wrong. So I will start with a description of myself. I'm a Black woman. I have shoulder length hair that's pulled back in a ponytail. I have on a green and gold short sleeve shirt. And I will pass it on to Rahsaan, who's beside me on my screen.
I am Rahsaan New York Thomas, co-director of the San Quentin Film Festival, director of Friendly Signs, executive director of Empowerment Avenue, producer with the Hustle podcast. I am an extremely tall, extremely light-skinned, extremely handsome man wearing a black shirt and blue glasses with a goatee that is salt and pepper. And I pass it on.
I can go next.
Yeah.
Right. My name's Koura. I'm the founder and CEO of Space Dream Productions. I'm also a filmmaker and multi-award winning producer and director. I'm the host of the podcast Filmmaking Actually. I'm sitting next to a keyboard with a dark background behind me, wearing a light striped top. I'm a light-skinned mixed race woman with a shiny silver Star of David and dark shoulder length hair.
Awesome. And Genise, I'm not sure if your camera is not working and you're intending to be on, but we can't see you. If you want to turn your camera on or at least say something, let us know that you're here. We'd love to just get a brief bio of yourself as well.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, you can hear me. Okay, good. I don't know what's wrong with the camera, but anyway, my name is Genise White. I am a film student, and I made one film last year, 9-minute film, called Malcolm, who is a reggae legend. I have also a little radio show called World Reggae Party that's on every Thursday at Radio Fairfax, which is part of Fairfax Public Access in Fairfax, Virginia. And excuse me, I want to make more films, and I want to start hopefully getting grants so I can make more films, because the one that I did, I paid for everything, so, which was cool. Was part of a class in Harvard University, or Harvard, under Professor Bradley, actually. And I'm happy to be here. And like Rahsaan, I'm extremely good looking. I just have to hope for the camera to come on. Other than that, you can hear me.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's great to have everyone here. I know Hi's Mr. Q in the chat noted that he said hello, and note that he's an entertainer and amputee based on the East Coast. So it's great to have you here, Hi's Mr. Q, and everyone else who has also joined us live. So I'm just going to jump right into it. Since we don't have a lot of time, I do appreciate everyone's time here. And I'll start out with you, Koura, just to ask about, you know, how do you feel disability representation has changed? Or, well, maybe I should first ask, do you feel that disability representation has changed in the media over the years? And if so, in what way?
So I've been working in and around film for about 20 years. I'm a little older than I look. And I definitely would say it has changed, you know, from the years where, you know, physical disfigurement is the bad guy and the sort of Quasimodo hero level, to an attempt being made by mainstream media and studios to be more inclusive and to have more diverse representation in pretty much every category. I would say that I think it can still do a lot better, both by including people with disabilities in the creative process itself when it comes to story ideas and actual writing and things like that, show running. And I also personally love to see characters who live with disabilities where the disability is not their character. That's not what it's about. It's not, oh, this person's a wheelchair user and now we're going to talk about them being a wheelchair user. It's not about, you know, someone is deaf and now this whole thing is about them being deaf, because that's just one piece of who they are as a person. And in the films that we try to make, and what I encourage people who work with us to consider, is telling stories about people where, if the same way I happen to be wearing a striped shirt, if I happen to be using a wheelchair, that's just one very small part of what's happening in my day. And I think it will be much better when we focus more on the human side of characters and less on the sort of tokenization of people in any category.
Sure, yeah. And Rahsaan, what steps do you think the industry, or how do you think the industry needs to improve when it comes to?
Yeah, in two ways. When they need to make films with people, not about people. You know, don't come taking the story and running off, and you get the accolades, you get the rewards, and you tell the story the way you want. Tell that story in a way that includes consulting producers from that community. Get feedback from the characters. Tell the story with honor and respect. The second thing that needs to change, when you do run across people who have the talent to tell a story themselves, empower them to do so. Give them the resources, the same resource you would give any other filmmaker, and let them tell the story themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think about the film we were talking about earlier before we jumped on that you created. It's about uh, signing in the prison system. So I'd love to have you tell the audience about what made you create this film in the first place, this documentary, and yeah, just what's the backstory behind the creation of that documentary.
Yeah, there were two things going on. First and foremost, I knew Tommy Wickard. He's a friend of mine. We were both in the 1,000 Mile Club. We run together, like literally run around the dirt track together. And knowing his character, it made me want to tell a story about a person who had a violent crime who society's brainwashed to think should never get out. And when we talk about prison reform, they say let the people out who have nonviolent crimes. But unfortunately, those are the guys who have a very high recidivism rate because they don't have to heal before they go home. They can just get worse and whatever. They can just do their time without healing. A person with a long sentence, a life sentence, ages out of crime, one, but two, has to take the therapy, has to do what they need to do to be a better person to get past a parole board. And so the recidivism is 2%. But yet we're left out of the conversations about like letting people go. And so I wanted to show somebody who was an asset to society that everybody would agree shouldn't be in prison and doesn't need to be in prison anymore. The other thing was when he told me about what was going on with the deaf community, I realized that I didn't realize deaf people were in prison. Like they were invisible to me, and I was invisible when I was in prison. And so, like, I just wanted to make them visible. And it turned out Friendly Signs. We tried to tell the story to the deaf community and Tommy's story at the same time, and we just couldn't get it to work. And so now I'm working on Silent Treatment, the feature-length story that's from their point of view, their story.
Mm,
Mm,
that's awesome.
Thank you.
very.
Yeah, Genise, what has been your experience with accessibility on sets and production sets and just in the production environments in general?
Well, I went from, uh, oh, you didn't tell us you had a wheelchair, to now I'm walking with a cane. So 3 legs instead of 6 legs, so to speak. Um, Things have changed a lot, but there's still a lot to go. Um, there's still room for improvement. Like I said, I went from, you didn't tell us you had a wheelchair, and that didn't make any difference to me, but apparently it made a lot of difference to the crew. Um, to working with a cane now and walking in on my own and doing all those things. There's definitely still what I feel a little bit of a biased um, um, with some producers using disabled people um, and having them on sets and saying little silly things like you know um, you didn't tell us that you had a wheelchair or who brought grandma in or because I'm 60 and there's also I feel since universities are getting into the act, so to speak, Howard, Harvard, University of Maryland, uh, and other places that are having crews that have some type of handicap with them. I know that in Fairfax, where I live, um, FPA, there's an equal number of able-bodied and disabled, and that's almost unheard of. What 10 years ago, 15 years ago, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, no, I definitely definitely understand that when you talk about just how people's attitudes have been impactful in so many different ways within your life for sure. What strategies, Core, do you use to ensure accessibility is on the set?
You're a little breaking up a little bit.
Oh, am I? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
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 Oh, okay. I apologize. I said, for Cora, what strategies do you use to ensure that your sets are accessible?
Well, we start during the like pre-production phase. We have a templated survey that goes out to all cast and crew. It's mostly focused around allergies, both food and environmental, but it also includes any sort of clothing allergy, like especially for talent. We don't want to put someone in a wool sweater and they're allergic to wool. We also ask if they need any other accommodations while they're on set. About 3 weeks ago, I just directed a short film where one of the lead actors was deaf. So as part of that, obviously, was making sure we had an interpreter on set. I know a limited amount of ASL, so I was able to communicate, but not to the level of having an interpreter there as well. We focus on setting hours that I can't say we've never run over because that would be completely unreal. But for the most part, we focus on 8 to 10 hour days versus the kind of film industry standard of 10, 15, 20. And even on our longer days, we ensure if a day does go long, that it has a later turnaround the next day. So on the day where we went late, most people, their call time wasn't even for 12 hours after the last wrap. And there was a handful of people who had to come in then. Everybody else had, I think, like a 18-hour turnaround or a 19-hour turnaround. Like we made sure that it was in a way that makes the most sense just for people's general well-being. And then we try to provide meals on set that are actual meals. We try to provide snacks that are sustainable and not like, here's a red vine and a can of Coke. Hope you feel good about yourself in 4 hours. And then we just ask people as we're going, as they join our team, is there any accommodations that they need? We try to make sure that the spaces are accessible, that they're able to get to set, that we have things like parking and bathrooms and, meal breaks. Even if it's a non-union set, we still don't go longer than 6 hours before lunch. And if we have a shorter day and we're starting at 9, we might have lunch at 1, even if that's not in 6 hours. It's lunchtime. People are hungry. Let them eat. And then, we'll do a second meal if it gets much later in the day. Yeah, that way.
Yeah, one thing that I've heard it still feels like there's a disconnect in the sense that Hollywood is saying they're going to do better at casting and and hiring people with disabilities in front of and behind the cameras, but then still people from the disability community will say, well, it's either the storyline feels fake or feels fake, or I don't really relate to what I'm watching. It still seems like there's a bit of a disconnect between what the audience really wants versus what's being produced out of Hollywood. So I don't know. I'll put out to anyone who wants to speak to that if you agree or disagree, or what are your thoughts on that? Whoever wants
Not
to
to
go.
hog it, but it's something I feel very strong about, so I'll answer it quickly and then I'll stop talking for a sec. One of the things that I try to encourage when I mentor or work with interns is when you're casting, even when you're writing, the only physical, apparent, relevant notes of a character should be story relevant, where if you change it, obviously, if you're making a film about we did a Vietnam War film, and one of the characters is a Viet Cong. We had a lot of submissions from people who were not Vietnamese. This is a Vietnamese character. We're going to prioritize casting an actual Vietnamese person. I've also had auditions where someone walked into the casting room and they were like, "Can I ask you a question?" And I was like, "Sure." And they said, "What are you looking for?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, no two, like usually you go to a casting call and like everybody looks like you, like whatever role you're in for on final callbacks, there's a pretty much collection of a look. And she's like, nobody out there is the same age or the same height or body type or even color. There's like nobody out there looks the same. And I was like, we're casting the lead character's best friend. Like, it doesn't matter. We just need someone who can play the character who fits well with the actress who's playing the lead. And they were confused that we had so many different people. And I encourage people as much as I can. If you're telling a story, tell a story. When you're writing the character, if it's not relevant, don't describe what they look like, what their hair color is, what their weight is, what their ability or disability is, and just open your casting to literally anybody, because you don't know who's going to bring what to the table. And maybe you have an actress who's missing a limb, who's an amazing actress who does great for the character. Oh, but this character's not disabled. Okay, what does she do? She is, they're having a conversation in the restaurant, she's drinking a drink. Okay, can she do that? Yeah, good. Who cares that she's missing a limb? Have her sit there and have a drink. Like, I feel very, very strongly about that. Sorry, I'll stop, but that's something that I feel very strongly about.
Yeah, no, I think, and there may be an aspect of the casting that people may not realize that within the script itself, there are very there's very detailed information about who, the director or whatever may be looking for, which could be somebody who looks like him or her that they're just used to seeing in their everyday, friends and family anyways. Yeah. Does anybody else want to comment on that, Rahsaan, Genise?
Um, last
Just
time
about
that
the
I did,
disconnect between, what the audience may be looking for or wanting, as opposed to what the Hollywood is pushing out there, putting out there.
well, Hollywood is pushing out able-bodied people. Now, like I said a few minutes ago, it is slowly coming out where there's more disabled people that are on screen and in the movies and the whatnot. But the movie, the deaf movie that was a couple years ago, and I can't remember the name.
Coda,
Coda?
Quiet Place.
Koura, yeah. That comes to mind, but it's really too little, too late. I mean, things can always change, but it should be more. I mean, disabled people are uh, what, like 40% of the population, or something that I read recently. So it should be more coming out with actors and actresses and um, in my case, film students and radio producers and TV producers, the whole gamut. There should be more equal balance, and there should definitely be more talent um, that is disabled, and not hiring somebody who is able-bodied to play somebody disabled.
Yeah, I mean, are there any stories that you think are missing and not being told from the disability community? I know as having this new streaming network, I really tried to, I like intersectionality aspects of it. So, and I know that the intersectionality between disability and sexuality and however you want to define that word is very much missing. So if I find a film that has that, then I'm on top of it trying to get it as soon as I can get it because it's not discussed as if it's taboo almost. So are there any stories that you feel are missing that you think need to gain more attention when it concerns the disability community? Koura, I'll start with you again.
Well, did Rahsaan want to add anything to that last one? I don't want to.
And
Yeah,
I'll wait my turn.
Okay, what was that? I will say that I think a lot of the stories, so this is going to sound a little funny, but when I entered filmmaking, the first film that I made as a director was actually that Vietnam War film. And it's a story about two men. It's half in English, half in Vietnamese. I directed it, I produced it. And when I started submitting it to festivals, I would submit it to women's festivals. And I was told, oh, well, it's not about women. And I was like, but I'm a woman and I made this movie. And they were like, well, it's not about a woman's issue. And I was like, I think it's about peace among humanity, which seems fairly universal. And it was very confusing to me, like the sort of, if you identify as this, you have to make movies about this. And then once I started making movies, like started submitting films as a person with disabilities, because when I first started, almost all of my disabilities are invisible and I present very able-bodied, and speaking as someone with disabilities was not something that I was comfortable doing for a long time. I only have lived with very limiting disabilities for the last about 12 years. And up to that point, I didn't identify as a person with disabilities. I was definitely neurodivergent, but that wasn't like something I focused on. And I started submitting my film saying, hey, I'm a person with disabilities. I made this film. And I would get told, well, it's not about disability. And I would be like, but I'm a person with disabilities. My team has, like, majority of the people on the set have disabilities. We just wanted to make a movie about whatever we're making a movie about. And we would get told it has to be presented in this light. And it just reminded me of the same thing as being female, where it's like, well, it has to be about women. And I think that a lot of the sort of system around festivals and categorization for films about disability is, it's not enough to just have somebody who is deaf or have somebody, like we did a film about a girl, it's a narrative about a girl who lost her hearing in an accident, had to learn how to dance again. The fact that she's deaf is mentioned obviously very briefly because it's a plot point, but it's about her and about her dancing and about like her kind of reconnecting with herself. And then we made a film that has a lot of like mental health themes to it. And almost everybody on set has some sort of disability. And it wasn't specifically like almost like a PSA, and we didn't get any traction on it. And then I've tried to submit a couple of films to different sort of like disability centric festivals. And I'm always told it's not about disability.
Right.
And I'm like, my disability runs my life. I don't want to talk, like, my movies are my escape. I don't want to talk about my disability when I'm making a movie. I don't want my character to just be spouting out a dialogue, educating people on what this disability is. I want the character to live their life. I have a very complex life that I have to manage around all my disabilities, but I have a very complex life. And I think if it was more like lauded to just, if you have a disability and you made a movie, you qualify for this festival or for this award or for this grant or for this support, because it seems very sort of, I don't want to like overuse the phrase virtue signaling, but it feels like the festivals sometimes are trying to go, oh, look, we have a film about deaf people and it's all about deafness and it educates people on what it's like to be deaf. And it's like, okay, if it's a documentary and the purpose is that education, but what about a deaf person who's playing football and they're trying to make it on the football team? What about I don't know, someone who's a wheelchair user who is working their job and has a crush on their coworker? Like, there's so many more things to their life than, you know, yeah, when I started dating my husband, I didn't open with, hey, I'm an occasional wheelchair user. Let's talk about that. Like, that wasn't first date conversation. But after we were together for a little bit, I was like, okay, this is getting serious. I should probably, like, you know, talk to him about it. But I just feel like it's very sort of dehumanizing and doesn't allow for the stories, because when we go to apply for grants, when we try to submit to festivals, the lens that we're looked at is, does this showcase disability? Does this educate people about disability? And that's not my job. I'm a filmmaker. My job is to tell stories and to share pieces of humanity, not be, I can only make either lesbian porn about periods because I'm female, or I can make some sort of PSA or inspiration porn as a disabled person. Like, that shouldn't be like that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying. I'll let Rahsaan go and then I'll add my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think one of the stories that need to be told, I'm fortunate enough to be trying to tell it now, is just the plight of deaf people who are incarcerated and like how that is for them. But also, I'm gonna just give away the ending to Silent Treatment. I hope you still watch it when it comes out years from now. Uh, they found a way to overcome the exclusion and all the shenanigans that works better than lawsuits, and it's building community. And how they were able to build community is they teamed up with Tommy Wickard and Albert and Jaime are teaching a sign language class with him. And they just had their second graduation June 7th. So San Quentin is now 64 times more inclusive. And with that inclusivity, you got a deaf rapper now. One guy's playing basketball with the guys before he left, before he was alone for years, just standing at the basketball court, staring, longing to play. They're going around doing deaf comedy, and they've created community. And the reason why I say that works better than the lawsuits, the prison law office keeps winning the lawsuits, building on the work of Judy Heumann, how she established ADA rights that apply to people in prison as well. They keep winning the lawsuits, but then the lawsuits need an injunction, another injunction, and monitoring to enforce. And sometimes it's enforced in a way that backfires. Like for like right now, the law is they can't hold a group or educational program that's exclusive. So it has to be able to include deaf people, everybody. It has to be accessible. And so what that means is if there's no sign language interpreter, there's no group. So that means there has to be a sign language interpreter there. And sometimes somebody forgets to call one or calls one when the group starts, and the sign language interpreter can never get there in time. And so now the group's canceled for everybody. So it backfires, right? And so I just learned from making this movie that, number one, deaf people are capable of solving their own problems, man. And building community is a better solution than litigation.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I will say that, just to piggyback off of what you said, Rahsaan, I think in general, there's so many stories about the deaf community in general that are, like, I remember coming across a documentary about 9/11, and it was following the story or telling the stories of the deaf workers who worked in the Twin Towers and what it was like for them to experience 9/11 hitting the buildings, and just having to understand what was happening based on people's facial expressions and feeling the building and things like that. So yeah, I mean, I think between your documentary, that one with 9/11, I mean, there are definitely a lot of untold stories and a misunderstanding in general about people with disabilities, and certainly including the deaf community. And Cora, what the thought that I had with your comment was that I think it sounds like what's lacking is showing the human experience, and that having a disability is really a part of the overall human experience of living. You know, if many of us live long enough, then we'll have a disability. You know, and it's certainly something that uh, a community, a minority community that anyone can join at any point in time in their life, I guess is probably a better way to say that. So we're coming up on time. I will do round robin. If someone wants to give a last comments about any advice they have for someone who's interested in getting in the industry or otherwise, what would you say to that person? How to get started, what advice that you have, whatever it is you would want to give to someone who's interested in getting in the industry. We'll
Don't
start
quit
with
your day job.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Don't quit your day job.
Don't quit
That
your
is
day
This
job.
is my day job. This is my day job now. This is my day.
Oh, you are blessed.
Uh,
I've not made a penny from a documentary yet.
no, I
But
haven't made
one day,
any
one
money
day.
from a documentary at
Yeah,
all.
impact.
Yeah, it is about impact. Yeah.
About impact.
Yes, definitely. I have a question, Jennifer.
Yeah.
I know that since COVID is here, it hasn't gone anywhere. I know a couple people that are in my community that have long COVID, and I'm just wondering when they're going to start doing documentaries and stuff about that as well, because that seems to be the upcoming disability now, like the new
I have,
disability.
yeah, I've been wondering the same, and I've been kind of trying to keep my eye out because I agree with you. I think that that's because of that becoming sort of a new disability, so to speak. And there being so many stories to tell that came out of COVID. I'm definitely keeping my eye out to see what comes out of the works from that.
Because I like
The
to work
ME
on that.
Action.
Yeah.
The ME Action Network. There actually is a documentary called Unrest, which is about something called myalgic encephalitis, which is caused by other viruses, not just COVID, but now COVID is added to the list. The film's called Unrest. It's by a filmmaker named Jen Brea. I believe it won an Emmy. It was shortlisted for an Oscar, and it won at Sundance 2018, I want to say. And the ME Action Network has done, ME, myalgic encephalitis, has done a lot on sort of science research and the awareness to COVID, because it's the same thing. But there's something called Mepedia. It is a wealth of sort of crowdsourced knowledge. It's a network of both patients and doctors. Yeah, if you're looking to connect with that community, that would be where I would start personally, if that helps.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Well, Hi's Mr. Q does have a question about can someone address how to find representation in the industry?
I started in Hollywood and I moved to independent film. So I have about 10 years of Hollywood experience and then about 12 years of indie experience. The whole reason I work in independent film, aside from having a disability that led me to start my own company and kind of create my own path, I have zero interest on trying. Like I'm not going to move a mountain, and I'm not going to break down a wall. But there's so many other cracks and holes and crevices and places where we can go without trying to find that representation. So personally, I would build your community, build your network, get yourself out there, find like-minded people, and just start creating. That's what we did. At first, I wasn't making money as a filmmaker. I was just making movies because I wanted to tell stories. It was everything I knew was making films. And eventually people started hiring me for stuff. People started coming to our company. I was able to hire a team. I was able to put a staff together. And now it's running the company is my job. Working with our clients is like we support activists and educators and entertainers and people who are working to make the world a better place while also making our films. And I would just decide if you want to try to climb the industry mountain or if you want to just make your stories and get them out there, because I'm a huge advocate for independent filmmaking. And there's a platform called Seed and Spark, which is amazing for funding and for supporting sustainable film careers, for crowdfunding, actually crowdfunding and actually getting some funds together to make a project. There's so many distributors out there. There's so many resources and ways to go at it. You just either need to be a producer or work with a producer, and either have another job that can sustain you or figure out how to be paid along the way. And it's, other than that, representation in the industry, someone else will have to answer because I actually don't know.
I am not represented in the industry, and I will just tell you that nobody helps you win until you're winning. And so I would start out independently and make my way. And now that Friendly Signs is catching heat, I do have representation for Impact Tour, and we're building from there, you know. You have to start winning. You have to gain momentum. You have to have a value to somebody, because if they're representing you, they're representing themselves. They get a cut, right? And so they need to know that you're worth something.
Yep, definitely.
So
No,
true.
you're not going to win until no one thinks you're winning until you're winning, right? Like they
No
don't.
one helps you win until you're
Yeah,
winning.
right. Yeah, yeah. It's hard to find people to kind of believe in what you're doing when you're not winning, to be along for the whole ride. But I'm sure you have plenty of friends when you're already at the top, though.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Tons of friends when you're at the top, but hardly any when you're at the bottom.
Yeah. All right. This was so much fun. I appreciate everyone jumping on the live with questions. Thanks so much for the questions. I appreciate all of my guests coming on, Koura, Rahsaan, Genise. It was a pleasure to talk to all three of you, and we will